Isaac's getting a workout here today, so leading worship, going to go teach the middle schoolers here. Appreciate him, appreciate the team, and thank you, Drew. And how awesome. With Ben and Caleb, let's give God a round of applause again for the baptism. So, God's doing a good work. We are going to be in Song of Songs today. Whether you knew that and you came with excitement or hesitancy, or you're just finding it out right now and you know what the book is about, or maybe you don't, you're going to find out in just a minute. We welcome all of those reactions and responses to this. We're doing a series called Love Song, and probably one of the first things that we need to address right off the bat is a question that scholars have debated for a long time, and some of you won't care at all, but some of you do. Is Song of Songs an allegory? Meaning, is it a story about the church and Jesus or about God and Israel? Or is it a love song about two individuals, a man and a woman, madly in love with one another? Now, I've read enough over the last couple of weeks to probably fill 2 sermons talking about both sides, but I'm guessing that's not really what you're here for. If that's you, I encourage you to dig in and to read on that. We are going to approach it as a love song between a man and a woman. And really, because the text treats it as that, there's not hints that this is some spiritual allegory relating in another way. Although much of Scripture does use the marriage metaphor to describe Jesus and the church. Now, we're approaching it in this way with care and handling and discretion. We have rated our series PG, maybe PG-13, not vulgar in any sort of way. But we want to engage in this topic because what happens is the world just as a whole idolizes and lifts up sexuality and sex in all sorts of different ways. And it is obsessed with it. You see it every single day in so many different ways. But then there's the church that's like, well, it's a little taboo to talk about. We're only going to talk about what we're against. And when's the last time you heard, besides like 10 seconds ago, the word sex in a service? And you now heard it twice. And you'll hear it again as we walk through this. Now, I'm going to share here what I would share with my 12-year-old. Now, the disclaimer is my 12-year-old goes to public school. And so we've had lots of conversations already with him about a lot of things. And so your age, like if you're a kid in here or you have your kid in here, they are welcome, and I'm going to treat things respectfully, but you may have conversations on the car ride home. It's happened previously as people have been hearing different things, but everyone is welcome here. Also, whatever stage of life you're in, you're welcome as well. Whether you're married and you are in the best marriage ever and you are so madly in love and you just can't get enough of that other person, you're welcome here. If you're in a marriage where it's on the complete opposite side, it is a mess, it is broken, it is pain, you are welcome here as well. If you are in just this like humdrum marriage, you're welcome here. If you are single, if you're divorced, if you're widowed, whatever stage of life you are at, you are welcome. And I think there's going to be something you can take away from every week. Now, this is a love poem about a man and a woman, and so there's going to be a lot of conversation around relationships here. And so we're just thankful that we get to do this. But to start this all off, and while you're processing everything I just threw at you, anyone ever play Name That Tune before? Yep. Okay, we're going to do that really briefly here because our first sermon title is called The First Notes, and I'm going to explain that more. But the way this is going to work is a song is going to play, and then the first person to raise their hand or stand up, I'm going to call on you. You're going to share what the song title is, all right? And then you're going to get some points, and someone's going to win. Okay, here we go. First song. Happy, yes, Fran, thank you. Good work. You get 50 points for happy. You say it with a smile, too, and love on your sweater. So how appropriate that is. I love that. All right, so Fran is in the lead. All right, that was a song called Happy by Pharrell Williams. All right, next song. Here. Eye of the Tiger, yes. So you also get 50 points, and maybe that motivates you to go run some stairs or do something with that. So, all right, next one. There you go, and with enthusiasm and a smile, you get 100 points for that, just because, I feel like there's some Star Wars love in you. Is that true, Star Wars love? Yes, a little nod. Okay, all right. So 100 points there. All right, next one. Wow, and dancing. You said it. Staying alive, a Bee Gees girl, you get 250 points just because you're a Bee Gees girl there. That is awesome. That was great dancing down here too. Like someone else was probably first, but I just noticed the dancing. So that was deep. All right, last one here. Well, I think it's off the Elephant album. So there you go, Seven Nation Army. Yes, White Stripes. There you go. That like ultimate stadium anthem there, and you get 50 points as well. So I think you won, right? Yes, you won. Congratulations, fame, notoriety, a round of applause. There you go. So music, you just experienced some first notes, some early parts of a song, and some of you were like, yes, dancing, right? Like it's beautiful, and we do that with songs. And then others of you are like, oh no, now I'm gonna have the song happy in my head all day long. These first notes matter. They make a difference, and we turn the music up, we turn the music off. It can stir memories, whether they're positive or negative. These first notes drive us to different places. In relationships as well, the first notes matter. These first realities of a relationship. So we use terms like love at first sight. Anyone love at first sight people in here? There you go. I got some hands in the back there. Any other? I love that. Rob, were you the only one at love at first sight in your relationship? He goes. That was awesome. That was so good. Oh, man. This is fun. What about people that took a little bit longer in the relationship? Maybe, Rob's pointing, still working on it over here, that you took maybe a little bit longer. The first impression wasn't so good, but you got there. And a couple of hands, all right. Yeah, yep. And but you made it work. So that is awesome. So we in relationships, whether they are a romantic relationship or a friendship, we have these first notes. We have these things that draw us to one another, and the word is attraction. We are attracted to other people. And what attraction is an interest or desire for some level of closeness towards another person. And researchers talk about attraction really in three main categories. Is physical attraction, which we so often think of right away, social attraction, where we enjoy their company. This is often the friendship element. And then task attraction. So someone may have a skill, a talent, an ability, connections with different people that allow you to better yourself. But then we can break it out even more into emotional attraction, romantic attraction, sexual attraction, intellectual attraction, aesthetic attraction. Maybe someone dresses well, you just really like their style. And spiritual, how they relate to God and one another. Now, when we're attracted, we're captivated a bit. There's something about that person or people that you're like, I want to get to know that person more. I want to engage in something with them. Robert Fulghum, who wrote the book True Love, said, we're all a little weird, and life is a little weird. And when we find someone whose weirdness is compatible with ours, we join up with them and fall into a mutually satisfying weirdness and call it love, true love. Are there any amens? Anyone relate? Yeah, like we bring our weirdness together, and it's that weird thing called love. What a beautiful picture there. So the next 4 weeks, we're going to walk through Song of Songs. Today, we're going to talk about attraction, these first notes. Pursuit next week, of seeking harmony, of pursuing one another. Intimacy, the duet. And then endurance is going to be this unfinished song of this longevity. And so if you're not there already, I want to invite you to turn to Song of Songs. You can find it. It's in the Old Testament. If you find Psalms, which is essentially right in the middle of the Bible, and you go Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, then you'll find Song of Songs. If you have a black Bible in the chair, it's on page 547. And so these books that I just mentioned, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Songs, are wisdom books. They're filled with all sorts of different wisdom. And Song of Songs is a poem. It is poetry, unlike Proverbs and Ecclesiastes. So later on, when we read words like her hair was like a flock of goats, it's poetry, right? These are images that are there. and we're going to talk about some of these things yet today as well. Now, this poem is considered to be authored by King Solomon, son of David and Bathsheba, written about 900 BC, and the authorship has been debated. The reason being is that this is about a relationship between two individuals. Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines. Ugh, wow. So people say it could be him, but it couldn't. And so there's all sorts of ideas that, he wrote it, or it was dedicated to him, or it was written in the wisdom style, or maybe he edited it. Maybe it was something that was to him in a way of honor. And the reason being is verse 1 of chapter 1 of Song of Songs says, Solomon's Song of Songs. So there's this debate over what this means. And as Nick was talking last week, he talked about holy, 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 this emphasis on repeated words. So when we see this in Scripture, if it's King of Kings, it means the King of all kings. Lord of lords means the Lord of all lords. And so what is here is the song of all songs. So the author is saying this is the best song ever. And there's this emphasis on it, and hence the name. So our characters that we're going to walk through this journey with, there is a woman, there is a man, there is a group of women that act as a sounding board, and then we're going to hear of brothers and a mother later on. You need to know that this poem is not in chronological order. The way we're approaching these weeks is in a bit of a chronological order. However, these are more like snapshots of this marriage, because you're going to see right away we're jumping right into the relationship, this committed covenant marriage that they have here. So let's start in verse 2. And the woman speaks, and the woman takes initiative and invites the man to take initiative. Verse 2, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is more delightful than wine. This romantic, intoxicating kiss that's there. Verse 3, pleasing is the fragrance of your perfumes. Just note here, this is like a freebie. Guys, take a shower, throw some cologne on, not too much, not like middle school boy, like a spray type thing. Smell good, don't smell too much there. Then she continues on by saying, your name is like perfume poured out. No wonder the young women love you. So she talks about the kiss. She talks about the scent. But then she says, like perfume poured out, this fragrant reality filling a room, your name is like this. So she's saying your name, your character is the most important thing. She exalts that character, his reputation, his name. It is so good. And this is the core of who we are, this character. It's who we are when no one's looking. It's who we are and what we think about and how we process who are we, really this integrity at our core. And it's not only her friends are looking in too. The other young woman, it says, they find him the same way. They exalt his character. Verse 4, she moves this quickly. Take me away with you. Let us hurry. Let the king bring me into his chambers. So she's saying like, hey, I want him to take me into his bedroom. And this woman and this man, they are extremely attracted to one another. She wants to be alone with him. And she's already mentioned character and taste and smell, and there's a whole lot more to come. And we as human beings, we're wired to be drawn to other human beings. But in our culture, as I've already mentioned, we exalt the physical. I mean, People magazine every year has the sexiest man alive, right? I don't think any of us have made the cover that are sitting in this room. Although I did tell Chris I was going to Photoshop his face over here and see if anyone noticed. But I just didn't have the time to do that. So physical attraction is extremely important. It is important. Please don't hear me say like it's all just character. No, physical attraction is important. See, what the body does early on in this limerence phase is it releases all sorts of hormones, and we get this euphoric feeling, and we feel alive, and we think about them, and we just obsess over them again and again. And this is awesome. This is great. And you may be able to think back in your relationship, or maybe you're in that phase where he or she is just perfect. Let me tell you, that euphoric phase does not last forever, right? You snicker quietly because that person may be sitting next to you. However, it's not just stuffy Christians that say that. Rather, this is science saying that after about 18 months, that there is this phase that wears off, and then you look and you're like, all right. Okay, that's who you are. And hopefully, you look and you see the character. Hopefully, you look and you see, like this woman said, your name, who you are is far more than just this physical. And the friends in verse 4, they chime in and they say, we rejoice and delight in you. We will praise your love more than wine. So they confirm this relationship. It's like a wedding. People who are there to support, to encourage, to bless that wedding. And let me tell you, if you are dating someone right now, or you're considering dating someone right now, where you're like, they are the best person in the world, they are wonderful, and you go on and on and on, and the people around you are saying, nope, no, they're not. You need to listen to them. They're seeing past that foggy, euphoric feeling that you're feeling. Listen. Consider what the people around you are. And this is the sounding board that the woman has, saying that his character is the real thing. And so what I want to do in the next few minutes is just talk about how our attraction is rooted or starts or begins with character or should. It grows through connection, and it needs to thrive in respect. So this is a progression we're going to walk through here this morning briefly. So she continues on, and she says how right they are to adore you. So she speaks to the men and is like, yep, they saw what I saw. This is good. You're good. And then all of a sudden something happens. The woman becomes very self-aware of herself. She pauses, and she's so captivated by him that then she draws back to herself, and she's like, oh, I wonder if I had that value. And this is how she communicates and even apologizes for her appearance. She says, dark am I, yet lovely. Daughters of Jerusalem, dark like the tents of Kedar, like the tent curtains of Solomon. Do not stare at me because I am dark, because I am darkened by the sun. My mother's sons were angry with me and made me take care of the vineyard, my own vineyard I had to neglect. So what she's doing is she's looking at the tan that she has because she worked outside. Not because there's anything wrong with a tan, not because there's anything wrong with any skin color, but rather she's looking at herself saying like, because I'm tan, I have worked outside, I am a laborer, I am of the lower class, and she sees him as this high, wonderful being. She looks at what is her insecurity, and she just says, I don't know if I'm worthy enough. And for all of us here, we all have something that we pause and we're like, am I worthy of that love? I have this thing, whether it's an appearance thing or a mental, emotional, or a past experience, whatever it is, we have this thing where it's like, I wish I could have, or I could be different. She just believes her hardships, her appearance has made her less qualified of being loved. And what she does in the next number of verses is she quickly moves on from that. Like she says it and then moves on like, okay, I don't want to expose my heart too much. And we do those same things, right? We may expose this area of pain a little bit in relationships, but then we move on because we question that of, am I worthy to be loved? And I want you to notice in verse 9 how he speaks into her. He doesn't miss what she said. Even though she has a number of other verses, verse 7 and 8, in verse 9, she says this. Here, he says this to her. This is the affirmation in verse 9. He says, I liken you, my darling, to a mare. Okay, what is a mare? A horse. She's talking about her appearance, and he says, oh, my darling, you look like a horse. Don't do that. No. And then he goes on and he's like, no, not just a horse. Your cheeks are beautiful with earrings and a neck stringed with jewels. We will make you earrings of gold studded with silver. So he's saying you look like a horse, but with jewelry. It's better, right? Improvement. Poetry, right? Remember, we're walking through poetry. So there's a number of different descriptions of what this could be. But one scholar, he talked about this. So he mentions Pharaoh's chariots. They're pulled by stallions, these males. And they're going into battle. And this has been a battle technique that has been recorded throughout history. So the stallions are pulling the chariots, attacking the other army. The opposing army is like going, oh no, this is not good. So what do? They release a mare, the female, to run across the field. And what do stallions do? Woo! And they pursue, right? So what scholars believe he's saying is that the man takes this opportunity to speak into her insecurity by saying, you are so attractive, and you draw my attention. Like when you show up, I am captivated by you. And not only me, all the other guys around are captivated. And then he mentions these jewels. And he's not a jeweler. Like he's not saying like we're going to actually make these things. What he's saying is that we together, we will make you even more beautiful. You will make me even more beautiful as we're together. So this attraction is coming to this point where this connection is growing together. My chaplain at Hope, Ben Patterson, I remember he said this, and it's both encouraged me and challenged me 100 different times since I left college. He said, I remember when I met my wife. He said, I received her as a gift from God, and I was so grateful. He said, but the thing I realized is that God entrusted us together with one another. And he said that my job is to return her one day to God in an even more beautiful reality than when he first gave her to me. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome and so convicting, right? I mean, that duty that he was just seeing of like, I need to speak into you. I need to make you feel safe and secure. Like, I need to do my part to know how beautiful and loved and special you are. Your character is amazing. So for the next few verses 12 through 17, they continue to speak into one another back and forth. And in verse 1 of chapter 2, she says, I am a rose of Sharon, a lily of the valleys. You're like, finally, yes, she's seeing her worth and her value. Now, we note that a rose of Sharon and a lily of the valley is a very common flower. And they would burst forth together with many other identical flowers. So again, she's putting this forth of like, okay, I am a flower, but I am just like everyone else. She's saying, am I really that special? Check out this line. This is a line you can use, guys, all right? He says, like a lily among thorns is my darling among the young women. He's like, okay, fine, you're a lily, but everyone else is a thorn. I want nothing to do with them. I'm going nowhere near them. You are the one that has captured my attention. And this connection brings them even closer together. They are speaking life into each other. They're encouraging one another in all sorts of different ways. And in the next number of verses 3 through 6, she talks about apple trees and shade and fruit and banquet halls and banners. But it's poetry, and she's not talking about apple trees and shade and fruit and banquet halls and banners. They are together. Verse 6, I'm so sorry, Adrian, I'm jumping like crazy. You're doing an awesome job. Verse 6 says, his left arm is under my head, and his right arm embraces me. They are not slow dancing like this, right? They are embraced in one another. And she even in that verse before says, I am faint with love. I am exhausted because of this emotional and this physical connection. A lot has happened in these first verses. This attraction, growing through connection and thriving in respect. So let's pause for a moment in the text. Let's give the couple a little bit of privacy here, and let's talk about how they got here. The man and woman, they both feel secure. They both feel special, and they both feel safe. And this is attractive. And you don't have to be people's sexiest man alive to help another person feel secure and special and safe. Every single one of you can do that today, now. The security, like what are you building together? Are you that person that builds that security, that encourages? Are you their person? Are you working through whatever it is that you are changing and growing, not just asking them to? That you are providing that security in whatever way you possibly can? Does he or she feel special? Do they have your attention, your heart, your time? Do you speak life to one another? Does that person feel seen and valued? Do they feel safe in your words and actions and thoughts? Are they safe physically? Are they safe emotionally? Are they safe in every possible way? Are they secure, special, and safe? And this doesn't even have to be a marriage or dating. There's friendships, work relationships, whatever it may be, where you can seek to value that relationship where someone feels secure and special and safe around you. Now, relationships, they're built, and we're going to illustrate it briefly with a pyramid. Pastor J.D. Greer, he illustrated it this way. And he said that we need to start with the spiritual, because in the spiritual, this is our foundation. This is where everything is going to be built from. If your walk with Jesus is the most important thing, you should look around, be like, who is running towards Jesus with me? Who is doing that? Because ultimately, if you end up with this person in marriage, you're going to make decisions of how to raise your kids, how to spend money, what your household's going to be like. What are you going to do with your time? What's going to be taught? Does this person share this common vision? And then there's this emotional building block that goes next on top of the spiritual. In Genesis, when God created, he said it was good. I mean, God created, it was good. But then when he looks at the man, he sees the man hanging out in all this goodness alone, and he's like, this isn't good for him to be alone. And so when God gave him Eve, he wasn't trying to solve the problem of procreation or sexual fulfillment or someone to share chores with. No, it is companionship. It is friendship. And so in this emotional connection, do you connect with that person? Are you seeking that person after you've built on the spiritual block, this emotional connection? Do you enjoy being around them? Are they your friend? Do you share what's going on in life? Is there any common interest? I was thinking back on this emotional, and one of the privileges I have so often is just to journey with people in their last months of life. And one of the couples that I thought of was Bill and Rosemary Orwig. And I loved visiting them. They just had this really small place, and they would sit in this living room, and at first they both had chairs, and they would be facing the common direction, and I would sit in front of them. And what I loved was the way they looked at each other and the way they connected in both verbal and nonverbal communication. They would share stories. They would banter back and forth. They would laugh with each other. They would laugh at each other. When someone would forget something, they would fill in that other part of the story. And it was only something that a couple could have with time and intentional connection. And then later on, when Bill got a little more sick, his hospital bed sat next to her chair, and they still faced the common direction. It's a beautiful scene that I'll never forget, is this common direction, them sharing life together, all the things that they had done, all the travels they had done in the past, and there they were still together, having built in these two realities. And then we have this physical. And really, this is the icing on the cake. And it's not delayed until later because it's bad or pushed away, but rather because it's so good. The physical is so important. So often in church we talk about, like, no, don't do that, and we get this feeling like it's bad. No, it is a gift from God. And it is sacred because it is so good. It is so beautiful. But it can't be the only thing that relationships are built on. It has to be built this way. Because if we were to invert this, and this is often the way that we walk through life, if you can, there you go, or maybe society's telling us around us, or you're feeling pressures, or you feel expectation of like, well, we just got to make sure the physical is good. And then after the physical, we'll build on the emotional because the physical will help us have the emotional. And then once we have these down, then we'll start following God and build the spiritual here, right? And so this is something that many have walked in and walked through and experienced or trying to experience, and maybe you're here now. And if you go to the next slide, we look at the stability of these two. I mean, there's one that is much more stable. It's this one. And this one is just teetering there. And again, it's like, what are we building on, and how are we building? And this is what the woman speaks to in the very last verse we're going to look at today, verse 7. She says, daughters of Jerusalem. She's going to the sounding board, those who have been watching their relationship. I charge you by the gazelles and the does of the field, do not arouse or awaken love until it so desires. Now, that doesn't mean like, once I'm feeling it, that's not what it's meaning at all. Rather, she's saying don't force it, don't hurry it, just wait. And we all know that physical intimacy has become far more common in dating, both younger and older. I mean, the age, it's much more common. It doesn't matter. When it's outside of covenant marriage, again, we're giving something which is so good and such a blessing that's intended for that person in our marriage to others, or the person that maybe we think we're going to end up with. But what it is it's a fog producer. We talk about this in premarital counseling, is we talk about 7 or 8 different fog producers. Some of you drove in the fog that was here a couple of weeks ago, and you couldn't see in front of you very well, right? It was hard to see what was going on. And again, what happens is if we focus on the physical first, and that's what we build upon, at some point, like I said, that fog is going to clear, and we're going to look and be like, what's here? Who's here? Who am I with? See, the world has offered this option for so long. And it's alluring and attractive and desirable because it is a gift and it is from God. But it has a time and a place. And I believe that our heart's longing is at the deepest that we want to be different. And Craig Rochelle said, if you want something very few people have, you have to be willing to do what very few people are willing to do. And so that common path is there. It's an option. But you're invited to a different way. Now, just as in a song, the first notes, they matter. For many of you, you have already had those first notes, and they are long gone. They're in the past. And so you hear this today. You talk about, well, if I'd begun with character and grown through connection, and then if I had lived in respect, and regret can easily come in, or shame can come in, and that's not the point. See, first notes, they do matter. They set a trajectory, but they don't define the song. There are other songs which have begun in very non-memorable or distracting ways that become a beautiful piece of music. That this music can move to a new place, can carry you into different emotions and feelings, and you could be like, wow, that song was amazing. First note stunk. It was amazing. See, as we've taught today, character matters. Your character, their character. We talked about listening to people around you and building properly. And ultimately, it's only Jesus that's going to complete you. Jesus is going to be the one. Would you go to the next slide, please? Many of you saw or heard the line from Jerry Maguire where she goes, "You complete me," or he says, "You complete me." And you don't want to admit you saw that movie. All right. Okay. For those of you that saw it, and you know what I'm talking about, where the character is in this romantic scene and they're like, "You complete me," and everyone's crying and like, "I want someone to complete me." It doesn't work that way. One of the things that we can fall short in is we put our spouse or significant other into this category that only God can have. That God is the one that will ultimately bring fulfillment. It is through Jesus Christ that we find what true love is. And marriage is a picture of that relationship, but it cannot define that or fill only what God and Jesus, or what God can do through Jesus Christ. Some of us have put spouses, significant others in this place of God and asked them to meet everything, to be this perfect love and compassion and grace and mercy and kindness and all these things. These are things that should be there in a relationship. But guess what? You're human and that person's human. And we're messy. We're always going to be let down by another person. And so we can't exalt that place into that God spot, that it's only Jesus who will complete you. As we wrap up, there's a line from Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. He said this. He said, "Love does not consist in gazing at each other, but in looking outward together in the same direction." See, if you're just continuing to go toward one another, trying to fix one another, or try to become better for the other, that's great that your effort's there. But really, it's moving towards Jesus together. It is moving towards that point together. It's looking out in that common direction. Like Bill and Rosemary, that common direction of their chairs, moving together in life. It's about who are you becoming? How am I emulating and growing more in Christ-likeness? You can't fix or change the other person. They have to want to do that on their own. You can pray for them, you can encourage. But are you moving towards Jesus? Are you focused on who you're becoming, that character, your character? Are you building in the way that we see? What is that common direction? And so I want to encourage you this week and the weeks to come. It's just to process these things. I understand there's going to be moments that are going to hurt. There's going to be moments that we'll laugh together. There's going to be moments that it digs at something, maybe a regret or something. Or maybe it affirms something. I hope there's a lot of things that go on. But I'm going to ask you just to process and to pray. And not to do it alone. Is maybe there's something you need to share with another person. Maybe that is a spouse or a significant other. Or maybe you're in the middle of something and you need to come and talk to one of us on staff here. Also on the weekly, under our resources, there's books, and there'll be more books added, and there's articles that'll be added. Also, there's resources for Stephen Ministry, and there's also resources for Christian counselors that we trust and know. And so if you are looking for someone to walk alongside of you, there's others that are here. I want you to feel like you're alone, because love is a beautiful thing. It is a gift, and it is also a challenging thing. But it's worth it. It's worth it. And so this week, I want you to think about this. As I'm building, as I've built, as I'm going to build, what is that going to be upon? What foundation am I building on? What do I need to go back and remodel or rebuild? What do I need to just let rest for the moment? But I want to encourage you not to give up. Not to give up. Keep setting it before the Lord. Let's pray. Jesus, you are so good. And Lord, I thank you for this journey we get to go on. Lord, I thank you for this poem. And Lord, I pray that you would meet each person in a unique way in this series. Lord, people are in so many different situations, sitting in this room and watching online. And Lord, you meet them exactly where they're at. And so, Father, may you continue to minister in mighty ways. May your Spirit move. And Lord, I thank you for the work. God, I just pray that you'd affirm or challenge or encourage, whatever it may be that you need to do. And Lord, we thank you for your word. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Kris is going to close us out.